Hey guys, so today I wanted to cover some surveillance resources, things that can help you better understand the surveillance in your area. And I'm mostly going to be focused on the US today, but that's partly because some of these resources have only mapped out United States data points. But this one is a new one. This is called surveillancewatch.io. I actually discovered this from Library of Leaks account on social media. And this is a new resource that you can learn more about the companies that are employing this. Now, personally, I believe these very companies, these very industries are completely antithetical to what the United States was supposed to be founded upon, with the threats they impose on everyone to change behavior. It's completely anti-American, in my opinion. So I am going to just show some of the resources here. You can take a look at this one and you can learn more about it. For example, here's Palantir. This one is very well known and is known to basically take data from various sources in order to do deeper surveillance, and the technology is provided to Israel, the United States, United Kingdom, Vietnam, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Poland, Germany, France, Denmark. You can see the list. And what's also nice about this Surveillance Watch site is it also has who these companies are funded by. So Palantir, for instance, is funded by BlackRock. Also Renaissance Technologies, State Street, some regular players, and of course one we all have heard about, In-Q-Tel. You can look into that one. I might cover it later. So you can also find different sources for articles on these companies. So if you're interested in finding out about some of the companies that are doing this stuff, you can take a look at Surveillance Watch. So we can go through here, and in fact, this may pair well with another resource, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Atlas of Surveillance. So with this, we can actually see the actual map, and then we can also see the type of surveillance that's implemented in that area, and we can also click on it, and we can find out the companies. So you may be able to go ahead and click on, this is black dot, this is drones, so all these black dots are showing where these drones are implemented around the country. And then you may want to double click on that, and you can find out what county or wherever these drones are being operated, and then you can also find out the vendor in a lot of cases. This one doesn't show the vendor, but it may actually have it, and a lot of times there are DJI drones being used, but there's a lot of talk about moving to something else for some local law enforcement, for instance, being that DJI is a Chinese company. So there's a lot of interest in migrating to other companies that may be more allied. And then, of course, you have fusion centers where they do intelligence sharing and all of that type of stuff. So this video is really about just the study of surveillance and how you can learn more about the surveillance that's being used in your area. So there are also gunshot detection in certain areas, and that's basically like a microphone type thing that can help them determine where possibly a gun was shot and help to narrow down that location. Now, of course, license plate readers, we're all familiar with that, LPR. Those are what, when police pull up real close behind you, that is to basically get your license plate a lot of times, and other times they might be testing you to see if you'll speed. But LPRs are license plate scanners that are on the road with law enforcement, and pretty much not used for anyone else or any other type of industry. So basically these are law enforcement mostly for this map. As far as I know, I think it's all law enforcement. So you can learn more about the companies. You can take a look at your area. So down here, we can take a look at video analytics. We can see predictive policing. That one I think is the biggest threat, and that's also one that Palantir specializes in, if I recall. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that's what they were involved in. So this is Jacksonville. We can see the predictive policing, and they're using a company called Geolytica. Predpol. which I guess stands for Predator Predictions and Policing. So you can take a look through this and find out where you are on the map if you have an interest in what kind of saturation level your area has. And as you can see, the west coast of the US is a little less populated with these surveillance systems, but once you move over to the east coast, you can't even see the map anymore. It's so much. So it's very heavily. And also another thing a lot of people aren't familiar with is the fact that there are less rights when you go around the border. So they consider that area within a certain mile radius to have less protection of the Constitution. So for those who live around here, around the very outside, the edges of the U.S., you may not have the rights that people in other parts of the country may have. So that's another interesting facet to this. So we can see the various different places on the map and the types of technologies being used. You can double click it to find out more about it. Then once you do that, you could even go over here to the surveillancewatch.io, and then you can learn more about those companies and see what they're up to. So there's so many of these different companies. I mean, I recognize quite a few of them. Things like Clearview AI, we've all heard of this. So this one is a facial recognition company. So this is facial recognition, goes through it. Another thing that's interesting is that whole Palantir thing. It says they do a lot of social media monitoring. And we all know that Elon Musk, who purchased Twitter, actually was working with Peter Thiel, the founder of Palantir, prior to the purchase of Twitter. In fact, I did run across a video of Alex Karp.
You were seated next to Elon Musk. A lot has been made about that.
Products work. I am in the business of delivering. You could ask him, will you stop using Palantir because he disagrees.
The founder of Palantir talking about Elon Musk and how he in one way or another said he may not use Palantir, he would probably still use Palantir. So it sounds like Elon Musk incorporates Palantir in some way. I'm not really sure the entire details on that, but it's worth knowing in my opinion, because the connections people have to these companies could tell us a little more about their motivations, possibly through purchases of things like Twitter. Possibly. I can't say that for sure, but just reading what I've read, there are a lot of connections between various people, and Twitter is a huge resource for intelligence gathering. Huge resource, and it's just the way it is. I mean, obviously, I encourage people to move over to Mastodon as well and to check out Mastodon and other less centralized platforms, because I think in the future you're going to be at their mercy, and you already are, but you just don't know it yet because they're being nice. So if they do have plans to lock it down, to make you show your identification, and to basically lock you into each post you make and sell that data, they could very well do that at any time. And that's why I encourage people to broaden their horizons, to actually go out there, try things like Nostr, Nostr. Maybe I'll cover that in a coming video. Try out other things like Mastodon, which is a great platform. I actually get a ton more engagement on Mastodon than I do on the X platform or the Twitter platform. So I personally like Mastodon better. I may not be on Twitter, much longer. I'm not really sure. It's just kind of dead in a lot of ways, and it's just not. Is it worth my time to maintain? I'm not sure, but I will leave up my Mastodon, of course. So we can see other vendors here like L3 Harris, which is also funded by BlackRock. BlackRock seems to fund a lot of these, so you can meet some of these connections that go through it. This is one company that is known for their IMSI catchers. So for surveillance of cell phones, to basically clone or fake base stations for cellular networks, to pick up those cell phones to both track passively and also to potentially manipulate that traffic. One tip I have for you is to turn on 4G only, or if you have 5G, of course 4G and up, block everything under 4G, because the security on each generation, 2G, aka second generation, is much lower and much more easy to manipulate. So if you have 2G enabled on a phone, you still could potentially be, denial of service to use that malicious base station where they could then manipulate your traffic with man in the middle much more easily than with the later generations of cellular. So we can see L3Harris also has affiliations with the NSO Group, which is another Israeli intelligence and spy company. So we can take a look at that. We can see that this group is affiliations. Let's see who funds them. So we can take a look, and you can see used on targets in Palestinian territory. So you can see that NSO Group is, and these are totalitarian technologies. These are not technologies for improving democracy. They're just not. They're for centralizing power. That's what they serve best. They don't serve the people. These technologies serve central players who happen to have great power already, and this only enhances that power in a more centralized way by being able to bypass the traditional security mechanisms of any given device, and that is part of what NSO Group does with their Pegasus spyware. So we can see a lot of the affiliations as well, so you can kind of build a map of connections here. We can take a look through this. We can look at the atlas of surveillance. We can find out what types of surveillance technologies are being used in our area, and then we can go and take the companies listed there and we can look them up on the Surveillance Watch, and then we can find out even more resources and information. Another great resource is Citizen Lab. They've done a lot of great work with their research. You can find out a lot more information and details on the underlying technology of things like Pegasus, for example. We can see some recent stories here on the latest research from Citizen Lab. So I do encourage checking that out as well. That's another one. Another one is DDoS Secrets. So that website is another great resource where you can find, similar to how WikiLeaks was reporting on journalism with reports given to them. You can find details of how some of these things work, of course. I like to know what's going on. So, I'm thankful that it's not as saturated over here, but you can take a look at all kinds of stuff, and then you can build those connections together with Surveillance Watch and find out more about the companies underneath. I will see you soon in a video on protecting your security and privacy.